Now let's look at the latest international news. A provincial governor and 14 other people were killed in a massive bomb blast inside a packed mosque during Friday prayers in northern Afghanistan, where insurgents have stepped up violence amid intensified NATO-Afghan military operations. More than 30 people were wounded in the explosion of the Shirhat Mosque on Tahar province, 7 seriously, said Provincial Health Officer Dr. Hassan Basir. General Shah Jahan Nouri, the provincial police chief, said the governor of neighboring Kunduz province, Muhammad Omar, was killed in the blast along with 14 others. The bomb was meant to kill Omar, who regularly attends Friday prayers at the mosque, Tahar governor said. No group claimed responsibility for the killing, but the Taliban have carried out previous attacks on the governor. The injured were ferried to a local hospital for treatment, some of them taken in police vehicles. At least 2 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli military operation in the West Bank city of Hebron. The deaths occurred following an early morning raid on Friday on a house in the old city of Hebron.
Eyewitnesses have confirmed 2 Palestinians have been killed. There are also reports of several injuries and several people having been detained. Hamas confirmed that the 2 killed are Nashat al-Karmi, a senior military commander, and Maumoon al-Natche, a local commander in Hebron. The Israeli army confirmed the killings, saying that al-Karmi, a 33-year-old resident of Hebron, was wanted in connection with the fatal shooting of 4 Jewish settlers on August 31st. A statement issued by the Israeli military does not say that Maumoon al-Natche, a 24-year-old resident of Hebron, was previously arrested in 2008, was wanted in connection with the shootings. One man was killed when Israeli soldiers shot at him, while the other hid in a building which the Israeli forces surrounded, calling on him to surrender. The statement said that the forces employed engineering tools in order to cause him to exit the building, and he was eventually killed. Palestinian witnesses said Israeli troops surrounded a house before dawn on Friday and following gunfire used bulldozers to raise the 3-story building. Residents said that the dead men, 33-year-old Nashat Karmi and 24-year-old Maumoon Natche, were local leaders of the Izz al-Din Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing. A statement issued by Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak said Friday's operation was a swift reply to the killings of 4 settlers on 31st August. The 4 victims, including a pregnant woman, were killed when Palestinian gunmen opened fire on their car near Hebron, where Hamas has strong support. Since the attack on August 31st, a number of arrests and investigations of facilitators have been carried out, the statement said. During these investigations, information regarding planned future terror attacks and the re-establishment of Hamas military wing in Hebron was revealed. The operation appeared to be ongoing in search of what Israel called suspected militants. But the Israeli army has not really given us a lot of information. Even journalists who were on the site having reported that they have been attacked by Israeli soldiers, their video material confiscated. The Qassam Brigade's military wing of Hamas called on the Palestinian Authority to stop security coordination and release Hamas members in detention.
6 Afghan militiamen who fired on NATO helicopters were killed in retaliatory fire early on Friday in eastern Afghanistan. The incident in Khost province sparked angry protest as hundreds of villagers shouted anti-US slogans and carried the bodies to the provincial governor's home to protest, Yugib Khan, the deputy provincial police chief, said. The community security force members in Khost province shot their weapons at NATO's chopper early on Friday, said Khan, quoting NATO officials. The helicopter fired back and killed 6 militiamen, he said. The militiamen worked for local tribal leaders and were not affiliated with the Afghan government, according to Khan. A NATO spokesman said he was checking on the incident. The alleged attack comes after NATO helicopter strikes on Pakistani territory killed 2 Pakistan border guards last month, stoking tensions between Washington and Islamabad. The US has apologized and expressed condolences for the 30th September attack, saying its forces mistook the guards for insurgents. Imprisoned Chinese dissident Liu Xiaobo won the 2010 Nobel Peace Prize on Friday for his long and non-violent struggle for fundamental human rights, a decision likely to enrage the Chinese government, which had warned the Nobel Committee not to honor him.
Torbjørn Jagland, the Norwegian Nobel Committee chairman, said Liu Xiaobo was a symbol for the fight for human rights in China and the government should expect its policies to face scrutiny. It was the first Nobel for the Chinese dissident community since it resurfaced after the country's communist leadership launched economic but not necessarily political reforms 3 decades ago. The win could jolt a current debate among the leadership and the elite over whether Chinese should begin democratic reforms and so how quickly. In China, broadcasts of CNN, which is available in tourist hotels, upmarket foreign hotels and places where foreigners gather, went black during the Nobel announcement and when reports about the award later aired. China's foreign ministry did not immediately comment, but a spokesman said recently that choosing Liu would go against the prize's aims. Unlike some in China's highly fractured and persecuted dissident community, the 54-year-old Liu has been an ardent advocate for peaceful, gradual political change rather than a violent confrontation with the government. The document he co-authored, Charter 08, called for greater freedoms and an end to the Communist Party's political dominance. It was an intentional echo of Charter 77, the famous call for human rights in then Czechoslovakia that led to the 1989 Velvet Revolution that swept away communist rule. Police arrested Liu hours before Charter 08 was due to be released in December 2008. Given a brief trial last Christmas Day, Liu was convicted of subversion for writing Charter 08 and other political tracts and sentenced to 11 years in prison. In a year with a record 237 nominations for the Peace Prize, Liu had been considered a favorite with open support from winners Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama and others. The son of a soldier, Liu joined China's first wave of university students in the mid-1970s after the chaotic decade of the Cultural Revolution. Liu's writing first took a political turn in 1988 when he became a visiting scholar in Oslo, his first time outside China. Liu cut short a visiting scholar stint at Columbia University months later to join the Tiananmen Square protests in Beijing in 1989. He and 3 other older activists famously persuaded students to peacefully leave the square hours before the deadly June 4 crackdown. Liu went to prison after the crackdown and was released in early 1991 because he had repented and performed major meritorious services, state media said at the time, without elaborating. Still 5 years later, Liu was sent to a re-education camp for 3 years for writing an open letter that demanded the impeachment of then-President Jiang Zemin.
A member of North Korea's Politburo gave the first public confirmation on Friday that Kim Jong-un will be the 3rd generation of his family to lead the country. Vice President Yang Hyun-sop said his people take pride in the fact they are blessed with great leaders from generation to generation. Current leader Kim Jong-il took over as North Korea's leader in 1994 when his father Kim Il-sung died of heart failure in what became the first hereditary succession in the communist world. Vice President Yang was speaking exclusively to APTN in Pyongyang at the start of 3 days of celebrations to mark the 65th anniversary of North Korea's Workers' Party. Government officials claim the celebrations will be the biggest of their kind in the nation's history. Mourners were burying their dead in Karachi on Friday after twin suicide attacks sparked angry mobs to rampage through the southern Pakistani city. Police stepped up patrols in Karachi, but the city of more than 60 million was mostly quiet as the majority of traffic remained off the road to avoid new possible outbursts of violence. 8 people, including 2 children, were killed and 65 injured in the bombing on Thursday evening on Karachi. At least 2 buses were later torched by mobs who also fired weapons onto the fire into the night. A bus also was set on fire on Friday on a major road. The river Danube was apparently absorbing the toxic red sludge with little immediate harm, officials reported on Friday, even though the amount of caustic slurry spewed over western Hungary was nearly as great as the Gulf of Mexico oil spill. Revising even higher earlier estimates, government officials said the reservoir break on Monday dumped 600,000 to 700,000 cubic meters of sludge onto 3 villages, just barely less in a few hours than the 200 million gallons the blown-out BP oil well gushed into the Gulf over the course of several months starting in April. The risk of pervasive and lasting environmental harm remained nonetheless, with laboratory analysis organized by Greenpeace showing high concentrations of toxic substances in samples taken from the sludge. Analysis of water in a canal near the spill also found arsenic levels 25 times the limit of drinking water.